Hey everybody, spoilers for all things The Last of Us, Last of Us Part 1, Part 2, and all the DLC and all that kind of stuff. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of The Script Department. I'm John, I'm joined today by Laura, and we're going to be talking about all things The Last of Us, the PlayStation video games. Before we get into that, if you haven't already, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all the latest projects that we get up to, including script readings from our global network of screenwriters. Also, hit us up on social media. You can find the links in the description. And if you haven't already, do subscribe to the podcast. Just search for The Script Department wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Laura, I don't know about you, but I am like the biggest fan of The Last of Us. I think it's like my favorite. It might not be my favorite game, but it's definitely one of the best games I've ever played. And it would be in my list of favorite games, definitely. First game absolutely blew me away. The second game, even though it wasn't as, I think it was a very divisive game for reasons we'll get into, but it still just floored me. It still just blew me away. And I think I might prefer the second one to the first one, actually, after playing it a second time about a year ago. I'm desperate to revisit it, but I want to give it I'm holding out for the PS5 upgrade that I know is just around the corner at some point. And so I'm just, I don't want to just, I like to, with The Last of Us, I like to play it a little bit, or slow it down, not play it all, not play it again and again. I like to just let it breathe and kind of feel fresh every time. But so I'm a huge fan of it. Can't wait for the HBO TV series that's going to be coming out. What's your, are you the same as me, or are you in the camp that maybe part 2 isn't as good as the first one, or where you stand with these?
I definitely agree with you. I think the second one is a lot, maybe not a lot better, but better. Just for a few different reasons. I think it took a lot of risks, and one of my favorite things that it did, it kind of had something that really resonated with people. Joel and Ellie's story in the first game, and then it really just took chances with that in terms of narrative and really kind of coming out unexpected there. But yeah, in terms of the TV series, I don't really know how I feel about that. I think that it works well as a game, and we have the story as a game, but I don't know that we need to kind of take it to every different platform and tell it in a bunch of different ways. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that. One of the things I love about it, and we'll get into the story in a few seconds, but one of the things I love about the game, and one of the things I really hope they never change with this format, because I'm sure there'll be more games in the future and reboots and all that kind of stuff, is that they haven't done the open world. Open world can be really dangerous for games like this, because you can start pulling on threads that weren't intended. You can start, you have to start exploring the world in a way that, and fleshing out the world in a way that can suddenly start creating plot holes. And there are no plot holes, really. There's no kind of aspects of The Last of Us where the screenwriter in me is saying, well, no, that doesn't make sense, or why would they do that, or it just all works. And my fear is that if you did an open world game of that, you'd kind of be at risk of exposing maybe some unintentional flaws with the world, maybe, or you might start to realize they haven't fully thought this aspect of the world through. And it's one of the things I really love about the game is just how credible this version of our future, or this kind of vision for a post-apocalyptic America is. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I think television is the kind of open world equivalent of cinema. It's, you've got so much room, and there's so much expectation to explore every aspect and every corner of how that world operates and how the kind of people who live in it, that, I do wonder, if I start seeing stuff I don't like, or if they've taken creative decisions if they've taken creative directions I'm not a big fan of, is that going to then, am I going to start projecting that on the way I play the games? So yeah, I'm like you. I'm a bit hesitant, maybe for other reasons, but I also really like Pedro Pascal and can't wait to see his version of Joel. Dare I say, he may end up being like my definitive Joel at the end of this.
Oh
Um,
gosh, wow.
so let's so we'll explain the story for those who haven't played these games. The Last of Us is set 20 years after a virus, after a kind of a pandemic, and it is the virus itself is, it's not a zombie virus. They don't kind of use that kind of language that other movies and TV shows might, but it essentially makes you into the Walking Dead kind of. You're this infection gets into your brain and it kind of rewires your brain, and then you become like a walking virus spreader. Your kind of goal is then to spread the virus onto more people, and there are different stages of the virus, and you can become infected, but you can also become what's called a clicker, which is somebody who has all these kind of it's like fungus kind of growing out of their head, and they kind of look like giant mushrooms sometimes, and it's they work on sound, and it's, it makes for great gameplay having to sneak past these really terrifying creatures, and the story really follows a guy called Joel, who's just this man who's just angry with the world. His daughter died on the night of the outbreak 20 years ago, and he's just been angry ever since. And he does these kind of smuggling missions and things like that for people in Boston, which is kind of one of the last few holdouts in North America. And he's given a task to bring this young girl, Ellie, across country to a hospital run by an organization called the Fireflies, and they're kind of a revolutionary group that are trying to kind of rebuild society. And we learn very early on that Ellie is immune to the virus, and she doesn't have to wear a gas mask when Joel has to wear a gas mask. She's been bitten once and it hasn't affected her, and so on. And so you've got this guy who lost his daughter and is kind of really hasn't gotten over it, now having to bring somebody who is very reminiscent of his daughter across country. And this journey takes about a year, and it spans different seasons and different weather conditions and everything. It's just the most emotionally engaging journey I've seen in a video game. And the only thing that topped it after that was the God of War remake, which is also a father-son relationship. And this is very much a father-daughter kind of relationship, a kind of a surrogate father, surrogate daughter kind of relationship. And I think it just blew people away in the games industry. I think gamers were just blown away by the standard of the storytelling. What was your experience playing that game for the first time? How did you get on with it?
So I played it for the first time probably like 2 months ago,
Oh,
and
really?
I'd already played the second one beforehand. So I started from the second and the first, so I kind of knew everything that was going to happen to these two characters, and so I felt like I was just everything was happening backwards, obviously. But yeah, it's really interesting because I think playing the second one before the first one, I had a different experience, and I saw all the events for the second game very differently than a lot of people. But after playing the first one, I can definitely see why everyone's so divided on the second game. But yeah, just watching these two characters who, go through what they go through in the second game kind of come together in the first game, and seeing how that happened really sort of, it was crazy because I was seeing it happening, and it was informing a lot of other things that I already knew. So it was a weird experience, but it was definitely interesting, and I really liked.
I've never thought of The Last of Us as a prequel.
Yeah,
And so that's how you've experienced it. That's really
yeah,
interesting. And
yeah.
did it hold up as a story, or was it like weakened somehow because you knew what was going on?
No, to be honest, I think it just added to it. I think it made it even more impactful because you can see how these characters eventually kind of go from two strangers to people that like love each other unconditionally. and
Mm.
to see that happen and know that happens, it's just so interesting to see how those connections are made in the first game.
Yeah, it is. It's a beautifully paced story. Nothing is rushed. At no
Yeah,
point are you feeling like they're shoehorning these two characters together. It's just, it's so natural on every level. By the end of the story, they get to the Firefly Hospital. I'm kind of moving forward here because I want to talk about the ending here.
mm,
Because this is like, I think, an incredible ending. They finally get to the hospital, but when they get to the hospital, Ellie has been knocked unconscious. She's brought in and she's going to be put under anesthetic in order to be uh, operated on, because they can create a vaccine. And Joel goes ballistic, kills everybody, and rescues her. And they're driving away, and she wakes up, and it's about 50 miles away, and she wakes up and she's like, oh, what happened? And he's like, oh, there's loads of them like you there. They've been trying for ages. They can't make a vaccine. And he makes these excuses to kind of make her feel better. And she just feels so glum. She feels so depressed because I think she felt that was my purpose. And now I'm not unique. She thinks, oh, I'm not unique. And now nobody, and they can't make a vaccine. Okay, it was all for nothing. The big thing throughout the story is it can't be for nothing. Like, that's the whole mission. They even name, I think, a platinum trophy or something after her.
over there.
Or after that line, I think, or what, there's some trophy. I think it might be the platinum trophy, that it can't be for nothing. That's the whole kind of, that's Ellie's driving force throughout the story. And then she's told, oh, it was for nothing. All the stuff we went through, we didn't need to go through it because actually, So we're just going to go back to Tommy's and we'll just settle there and start a new life.
Mm.
And you can see that she's a bit glum the whole time. And then she stops him in the field and confronts him and says, I want you to swear that everything you just told me is true. And he says, I swear. And he lies to her. And then she just simply says, okay. But she says it in a way where even I'm being more kind of emotive in the way I'm saying it there. She just says it in this way where it's very neutral and it's very like, you don't know if she's accepting it or if she's accepting that he's a liar.
Mm.
And then just cuts the credits. Now you obviously knew that there was some fracture in their relationship having played the second game. How did you feel about that ending, and how did you read the ending after playing the second game as well?
I think the way I read it is when she says okay, I think she's making an active choice in that moment to believe him because she wants to believe him.
Mm, mm,
And later on, over the years, it slowly eats away at her. And as you see in the second one, they bring it back up and they talk about it again. But I think in that moment, she didn't. She wanted it to be true. She wanted him to be telling the truth, and she
mm,
wanted to put it to bed. Because I think we know Ellie. She's not afraid to speak her mind. And I think that if she really wanted to, she would have pulled on that thread way more and gotten it out of him. But yeah, I think in that moment she wanted to believe it was true. She wanted to believe that she could kind of move on with Joel and start a life and kind of move in that direction. But I believe it's slowly just kind of this desire to have like value in the fact that you're immune and to be special and to be the answer to everything, and having that to kind of come to nothing and not even being there for that nothing, being like unconscious the whole time, and then someone you love is just being like, well, yeah, nothing came of it. um yeah, I think that really would eat away at you over time, and you'd have questions, and as time moved on you'd think about it more and more and more, and I think that's slowly what happened during the second game.
mm.
But yeah, I think she made a choice in that moment to just try and believe him and just keep him in her life and keep that relationship that she has now.
Yeah, I think every time I play that, or every time I kind of see that moment, I think my brain goes to, she knows he's full of shit, but she's prepared to just, okay, fine, I'm not going to say anything.
Mm,
Okay, I know where I stand now. I know where we both stand. You know, I'm more realistic about this relationship now moving forward. I'm a bit wiser. If this is a journey of her growing into adulthood almost, I know she's not. She's still a teenager, but you know, she grows faster than most people do, I think, because of the experiences that she's had, you know, emotionally and in terms of maturity. Um, if this is now a turning point for her in her life, I think it's like she's becoming wiser. Yeah. Um, but yeah, I like that idea that she doesn't want to disrupt what's been built, and it kind of does tie into that. It can't all have been for nothing. I mean, that when she says those lines when she says that line in the story, it's talking about the mission, but it's almost like at the end, it's almost like a reference to the emotional journey. Like, you know, we've been on this road together. It can't be, you know, everything we've gone through personally, it can't be for nothing. So I'm just gonna forgive the lie, almost. Yeah, I like that. I like that reading of it actually, because I don't think I've ever been able to. It's one of the things I enjoy about these talks actually is it kind of helps me articulate and
Mm.
figure out how I feel about like certain scenes in movies or whatever every now and again, or how I, like we were talking about Book of Boba Fett and couldn't quite figure out if I really loved the show or if I didn't, and the discussions kind of help with that. And I think
Mm.
this, yeah, what you've just said has been really helpful actually in just trying to understand my own feelings about that ending, because I think it's a masterful ending. I remember watching it and just thinking, cut to credits, please, cut to credits. Now is the time to cut the credits, and they do. And I just thought, oh, thank God, because I thought one more line of dialogue and they'd ruin it. You know, they'd ruin the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
So it was
nailed it.
perfect. There is another character in that story that is worth mentioning, and that's Marlene. She's the head of the Fireflies, this kind of organization, and she's the one. She's the one who kind of puts Ellie in their custody to begin with. Now, Marlene has a personal connection to Ellie. Marlene knew Ellie's mother, who we never really get to kind of learn about. And she is heartbroken about the idea that she has to sacrifice Ellie in order to achieve this kind of goal. It's not coming out of nowhere. She's not a Bond villain or anything that's, you know, kidnapped a kid or anything. She is really struggling with this decision. And in part two, we do see a flashback of her talking with the surgeon and like really like, is there no other way? Are you sure there's no other way? Like we know like they really make a big effort. They didn't have to in the second one, but they make a big effort throughout the first game and the second game to show us that Marlene is a very redeemable character. You know, that if she hadn't been killed, it wouldn't take much for her to be for you to build a whole DLC chapter around her story. Like, and we would accept it and we would play as her. I don't know if that's a stretch. What do you feel? Like, is she beyond kind of redemption or anything as a character? Is she a villain in your eyes, or or is she just another piece on this chessboard? Like, how do you kind of see her?
I wouldn't classify her as a villain at all. I think when you live, if you think about her perspective, like if you're in that kind of world and you've seen the things that she's probably seen, you know, she's in a dying kind of dying group of fireflies that are trying to save the world, and you see an answer, you the love that you have for that person can't be enough to deny the world of a potential cure. Like it just can't be. And I think in that point, that's where her and Joel are different. I think Joel understands what it feels like to lose a child, and that's something that like I don't think Marlene understands and probably doesn't know at that time. But you know, if you have a potential cure to save everyone like a lot of pain and change the world back to how it was before, I think he would pursue that, and there's nothing wrong with pursuing that. I think Joel has more of an attachment to Ellie in the way that he knows what it's like to lose someone, and he sees a lot of his daughter in Ellie. So Ellie's Ellie, but then I feel like she also represents his daughter in a lot of different capacities. But yeah, I think Marlene, I think she's definitely redeemable. I can see where she's coming from and why she's making the choices that she's making 100%. And I can also see why Joel's doing what he's doing. That's what I love about the game. Like, it doesn't matter what kind of perspective I'm looking through, like all the choices are credible and they make sense. And if you look at the backstories, they really inform the way that the characters act in scenes, you know. But yeah, I think she's definitely redeemable. And if she wasn't killed off, I can see there being DLC and all that kind of stuff for her, definitely. Yeah.
I I love the conflict triangle that exists between him, Joel, Marlene, and Ellie. You know, Marlene has a kind of she's almost like, you kind of almost feel like she's Ellie's godmother or something. You know, I don't know. I have this idea like she's the one who promised Ellie's mother she would take care of Ellie. But she hands Ellie over to Joel and Tess, which I think would be a really interesting kind of conflict to explore in the TV series. That idea of you were supposed to take care of her. You swore, you promised her mother you'd take care of her, and then you kind of fobbed her off because it was inconvenient or you needed, I don't know, and then she could have died at any time along the way, and it would have been on Marlene for abandoning her. And now she wants to kill her as well. And I think they're not kill her, I mean, yeah, she wouldn't if she could avoid it, but nevertheless, she is going to take action to kill her. And I just love that. There's just so much conflict inherent in that, and that love she has for Ellie, but at the same time, she is the most dangerous thing between Ellie and Joel. And then Joel has a professional relationship with Marlene as well that I think probably goes back years. So there's just that moment at the end where Joel shoots Marlene and says, well, you just come out, you just follow us. It leaves a bad taste in your mouth, even though you're glad like it's over. And I remember playing and just having that sigh of relief because I thought, oh, I don't know if I have the energy to do a shootout with Marlene here. I assumed it was going to turn into like a boss fight or something in the game. And I was just, I don't know if I have the energy to do it because it's you're so emotionally drained at this point. And I loved when he pulled the trigger because I thought, oh, it's over, thank God. But at the same time, I was also like, ugh, like that's, there's something that's happened here. And I don't quite know what has happened until the very end when you realize, yeah, he's kind of betrayed Ellie a little bit here. And so, yeah, I really love the kind of dynamic between those three. And also the woman who plays Marlene is coming back to play Marlene in the TV series, which I think, which is going to be really cool. So we'll actually get to see, and I think there are other actors from, maybe, I'm not too sure. I think I read maybe there is, but definitely I think Marlene is coming back. Google that to double check, but yeah, I'm pretty sure I read that. Okay, so let's get into the second story, right? Because this is the one that really divided so many people. I don't think there was a more anticipated PlayStation game. I say PlayStation because it's PlayStation exclusive. I don't think there was a more anticipated PlayStation game in 2020, was it, when the game came out? Yeah. Than The Last of Us Part 2. I think, that game, everybody, I think, who had played The Last of Us Part 1 wanted to get their hands on Part 2. It was just one of those games. It was an absolute masterpiece in terms of gameplay. It looks phenomenal. I mean, it looks like it looks better than some PS5 games, right? And it's a PS4 game. And I played on a base PS4, like my first my only PS4 from like 2013 or whenever it came out. So The Last of Us Part 2 is an epic game. And it follows Ellie as she goes on a revenge quest to find those who've killed Joel. So at the very beginning, she's had a falling out with Joel. We kind of know why, but we don't really see the full explanation yet. And Joel is brutally murdered in this incredible kind of a surprise thing. You just think, how, like, what? He's dead? What? Like, that can't be true. And and he's killed by a woman called Abby and her friends. And Ellie goes on the hunt to find Abby and her friends, and she goes to Seattle. And Seattle is being controlled by two kind of factions. And Abby works for one of those factions, and she has to go and find him. And it's basically like Kill Bill, just with the tone of like The Road. Imagine the people who made The Road making Kill Bill. This is what that is. It is, I've got my list, I'm crossing them off one by one, and Abby is right at the bottom.
Yeah.
And it is magnificent, the revenge quest. And you can see slowly throughout Abby's she's just blackening her soul throughout as she goes down this, she descends into this. And then something magnificent happens right at the end of Ellie's revenge quest. Ellie ends up confronting Abby. And then the game freezes and we start over at the very beginning again, but this time from Abby's perspective. And we play the whole game again from Abby's perspective, where she's gone off doing her thing and she's hearing about the chaos that's happening as Ellie is doing her thing, you know? So you're seeing these parallel stories running side by side, basically. That was a pretty big deal. I mean, when that, you know, so the game is broken up into 3 days, day 1, day 2, day 3. And, you know, day 3, Ellie, you know, finishes the last of the band, and then she gets to Abby, or Abby kind of tracks her down, and they're about to have their showdown. And then it cuts back to day 1, but this time from Abby's perspective. And I thought, okay, we're only going to see a bit of Abby here, and then we'll get back to the thing again. We'll get back to that showdown. And no, it goes to day 2, and then it goes to day 3. And you get really close to Abby. I mean, I did. I felt really like I couldn't. If you asked me who would you like to continue playing as by the end of this, Ellie or Abby, I don't know I could give you an easy answer on that one. How did you find, what was your experience of the game overall? And how did you find, we'll talk about Joel and Ellie's story in a bit, but how did you find the overall experience? Did you fall into that divide? You know, I know you talked about it already, but did you agree with some of the criticisms, or how did you feel about Joel's death and so on?
I think that I really just enjoyed it, the whole thing. I thought when they cut to Abby's story, I kind of knew what they were trying to do straight away. You know, showing her as like a child and rescuing a zebra. Like that's kind of one of the first things she does. It's like, oh, okay, I get it. I'm supposed to sympathize with the villain of the story, the person that I've spent half the game kind of wanting to track down and kill in the most brutal way because they've taken someone I love from me, you know. But yeah, I really liked it. I knew kind of what was coming and how I was supposed to feel, but I think what I loved about it is that when you're playing as Abby, you're not simply empathizing with the villain of Ellie's story, you're also becoming the villain of Abby's story as well. And you can look at the things you've already done and the characters that you've already killed and kind of feel a lot of remorse for your actions because you're seeing the people that were just an obstacle to you at one point actually be characters and active parts of, Abby's narrative. And I thought that was super interesting and definitely like it's thought provoking, and I constantly felt really bad for the things that I'd already done, and I was kind of it was really well done in my opinion. I enjoyed the whole thing.
It is a massive journey. I think it's probably the biggest journey I feel like I've gone on in a video game. Like when I mentioned God of War before, the God of War journey in that game, father and son traveling on this massive journey in order to, do what they're doing. It's epic, but this is, and it's not just because, you're seeing it from two different perspectives. It's not like they've just, copied and pasted the running length or anything like that to make it bigger. This is like really well earned time. Every character is getting essential screen time in order to achieve what it is they're trying to set out in this. And I don't believe you could accomplish this type of story in any other medium. Maybe in a novel, but even then I don't know, because you don't have that interactive component. I think so. As you said, they're trying to get you to empathize with the villain here. Abby is the woman who's killed Joel. You're meant to feel blinding rage, seething rage for Abby. You're meant to just be so like hateful towards her because she killed a character. You're meant to be in the shoes of Ellie here, wanting revenge. But yeah, and by letting you play as Abby, they make you more. It helps you better come to create that connection with Abby later. I don't think you could get that in a novel, because I think in a novel you would be situated side by side with that character, following that character through their journey. But playing as that character changes that relationship dynamic. It allows you to be able to create a better understanding of that character. So Ellie has Dina, this woman that she's in a relationship with, and Dina is pregnant with the child of another character, Jesse, and they're kind of like three best friends almost. But Dina really, she's kind of broken up with Jesse at this point, and she really has, she's only got eyes for Ellie at this point, and it's just this kind of really lovely kind of relationship. Abby rescues two of the enemy faction in this game, Lev and Yara, and they're siblings. And Yara is severely wounded. She's like the older sister. Lev is transgender, identifies as male, and has been kicked out of the community, has been kicked out of their mother's home as well because of who they are. And Yara is now protecting Lev. But eventually, in order for them to help Yara, Lev and Abby work together to try and get medicine. And through different contrivances, then they are basically stuck together. And it's Abby really learning that, my enemy doesn't have to be my enemy just because they wear a different uniform. And Lev is really coming to learn what life is like outside of their walls as well. And it's just this, again, it's the same kind of structure that's provided for Ellie, devoted to Abby as well. And it's, I don't think we can look at The Last of Us as just being Ellie's story anymore. It's Ellie and Abby. And Abby's whole backstory and her whole motivation for killing Joel is she is the daughter of the surgeon who was going to perform the operation. So that moment when you go in and you kill the surgeon in The Last of Us Part 1, which always gave me a weird, perverse sense of pleasure in the game, because I'm like, you get your hands off Ellie.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody shoots the surgeon, don't they?
Yeah.
It sounds barbaric, but you care so much about Ellie at that point. You're just like, no way am I letting anybody near her. So boom, and the idea that actually, so smart are these writers, Neil Druckmann and his team, that they knew that, and they put a name to that NPC, and they gave that NPC a daughter as well. And now that sick pleasure you took in killing that surgeon in that game has now come back to bite you, because your favorite character is now dead, And people went ballistic when Joel was killed. As angry as Ellie is, the fans were even worse.
Yeah.
Were you angry? Were you annoyed by that, or?
Not really. I played the first one, the second one first. So I don't know. To me, it was just a story, and I was like, I didn't like the way it happened. I thought it was really brutal and barbaric and just really awful to
Mm.
watch. And I couldn't imagine, like, if you think about Ellie, she's literally powerless to stop it, watching it happen. And I was like, that's gonna mess you up for a long time, you know. Um, I didn't have the same reaction because I knew it was, it's just a part of the story. But yeah, it was hard to watch nonetheless, even though I just met the character. It was hard to play, and I knew it was when I was playing the second one. I'd already watched the full gameplay twice, so I knew it was coming. I knew what was going to happen, and I still got really emotional, and it was still really, really hard to watch because, like, Joel literally saves Abby just before she takes his
Yeah.
hand,
Yeah,
and I
that's
think that was really, really, really clever. I
yeah.
think that just escalated everything, and even if you didn't play the first game, you came into the second game, and even if you hadn't watched it, like, you came in and you knew what was going to happen, and it still elicited the same sort of strong emotional
Mm.
reaction. That's solid writing, in my opinion. So yeah.
So Ellie, sorry, you play as Abby at the very beginning, like not right at the very very beginning, but a little bit in. You play as Abby, and she's wandering through the snow, and and you're like, who the hell is this person? Like, why am I playing as this person? And and you kind of get the feeling she's looking for somebody. And I'm thinking maybe she's looking for Joel. Maybe she's a firefly. Who knows? Whatever. Like, it's not. You don't suspect she's actually related to somebody from the first game. Even though the surgeon isn't a character in the first game. Let's be honest. But I think so good is the writing in this that they make you feel like, well, that surgeon was a named character all along, even though he definitely wasn't. You definitely feel like it doesn't. You don't have to be an Oscar-winning screenwriter to figure out what her possible motivations might be for being in this region.
Yeah.
And she gets chased by the infected, and she gets rescued by Tommy and Joel. And they say, "Oh, get in here quickly!" And as they're boarding up the room, they kind of the camera lingers on Abby just for a microsecond, and her eyes are just, she's like, Joel. Like, is this actually the guy? And you realize, okay, she's looking for Joel. And then she said, "Oh, I've got friends over, and we're camped out over in this place. It'll probably be safer to go there." And so they get in there, and Joel and Tommy try to introduce themselves, and then very quickly they realize something's wrong. No one wants to shake their hand, and they kind of start circling them, and it's very ominous. And then that's it. He gets beaten to death then, and Ellie comes in right at the last moment, gets beaten as well. But yeah, Joel gets beaten to death. I was relieved when it happened. I had this real sigh of relief when it happened. And I'll tell you, and it feels weird, I know, to say that, or I know it sounds weird to say that.
Yeah.
I knew it was going to happen at some point in this game.
Yeah.
I just knew it was going to happen. I hit my heart was in my mouth the whole time playing the first game, because I knew I assumed that, well, obviously Joel is going to get infected and Ellie's going to have to fight Joel at the end of the first game, because I thought I'd never played a game that was so expertly written, that was written like an Oscar-winning movie.
Yeah.
So I didn't assume that the writing standard was going to be so high. I just thought, okay, well, what's the typical kind of gamification of this story going to look like? Well, it's going to be Joel ends up, you have to kill your mentor character, whatever. Joel is going to end up betraying you or something, like, I just never thought that the storytelling was that highbrow.
Yeah.
And was that high standard. So by the time I got to part 2, I was like, Joel is definitely going to die at this point, because if he is meant to be the mentor figure, and if their relationship is built on sand, built on a lie, it's going to have to come crashing down at some point. And I assumed maybe end of Act 2 he would die. And so I was just so glad when he died, not even at the beginning of Act 1. I just thought his death is the inciting incident, and I was just, okay, we can now get on with it.
Yeah.
Because my whole worry was, as excited as I was for part 2, I thought, I'm going to be playing this game. And the question in my brain the whole time is this going to be the moment he's going to die? Is this going to be the moment he's going to die? You know, when's he going to die? And I'm not going to be able to enjoy it until the second time round. Because I'm just going to be waiting for the inevitable. And so I just wanted to like hug the TV when he died, because I thought, I can now enjoy this game moving forward. I'm absolutely heartbroken, but there's like this weight off now, and I don't know where the story will go from here. Yeah. And there's no way you can predict where the story is going to go, because the idea that you would end up playing as Abby for half the game just would have sounded ludicrous prior to that, you know. So that was kind of my experience with it. I have to say, actually, as much as I enjoy playing as Ellie in the game, I actually enjoy playing as Abby more. I thought she had a far more... Ellie had a fantastic story, but I thought Abby's story was just a really... It was a learning experience. You know, she's learning to embrace these, you know, these people who are supposed to be her enemy, and she's beginning to question, and she's beginning to... But at no point has she forgotten about why, and she regrets. Like, she's having these dreams. You know, she talks about how she's having like dreams and nightmares about what they did to Joel. She's you know, she is at an impasse, I think, about her. I don't think she can fully reconcile what she's done. So let's talk about the flashbacks with Ellie. Joel and Ellie. So the first flashback we see of Joel and Ellie, it's probably maybe 6 months or a year later after the first game, would you say?
Which one's that? Is that when they're like
the dine at the museum when they?
Oh yeah.
I'd say it couldn't be more than maybe 6 months.
Yeah.
It feels very Last of Us Part 1 in terms of the way they look. So it's Ellie's birthday, and Joel is surprising her by bringing her to this old abandoned dinosaur museum, a natural history museum. And it's not, maybe it's not a natural history museum, actually, because they've stuff about the space program as well, and NASA and stuff like that there. So I don't know, actually, but
museum.
Yeah, it's a museum, but it's got dinosaurs and spaceships, so it's everything Ellie loves. And they have this beautiful kind of very touching kind of moment. And then right at the end, there's just this masterstroke moment where they're being chased by a boar just around this room or whatever. And the boar runs away because it's, you know, it's a wild environment now. And then they stop and they've got the flashlights on. And then one of them kind of turns the flashlight to the wall where there's this firefly mural, this firefly symbol, and the word liar graffitied over it. Is it liar, I think? I think it's liar. And it's just this brilliant moment where you're like, yeah, that's the perfect word to sum up everything that happened in the first game. You know, like the way that first game ended. And when you get to, you can tell then that's like where the seed of doubt is being planted. Like, you kind of feel like whatever our interpretation of the end of the first game, Ellie has this, she's got, the doubt is coming back again. The doubt over everything that happened, what Joel said happened. The second flashback then, I think, is Ellie and Joel are on a patrol with Tommy, and maybe 2 years later, I want to say. Yeah. You know, she's much more confident at that point. And she's much more confident with a weapon as well, and a hunting rifle and stuff. And she's not talking with Joel. And I think Joel just chalks it up to moody teenager or something. But Tommy knows there's something else going on. And they don't really discuss. But you can tell like the relationship is really breaking down at this point. And then the third flashback is maybe a year or two after that again. Maybe a year. Where Ellie has run away and she's gone back to the hospital, which is a hell of a journey when you think about it.
Yeah.
And Ellie is confronted by Joel. Like, what the hell are you doing? Why are you running away? And she wants to know the truth, and he tells her the truth. And as much as we love to praise Troy Baker as Joel, Ashley Johnson wipes the floor with him in this scene. No disrespect to Troy Baker, who's a phenomenal actor, but she wipes the floor with everybody in this scene. She is incredible. Like, it almost feels like she's having a panic attack because of her whole world is just shaking. She can't breathe. She can't. And this isn't great animators. This is like, doing the work. This is animators trying to keep up with Ashley Johnson. She's so good in this. I mean, it's Andy Serkis levels of mocap performance here we're talking. Like, it is the best you're likely to find in terms of performance. She is phenomenal. And she says, okay, I'll come back with you, but we're done. And you stay out of my way from now on. We're done. We have nothing, no reason to talk to each other anymore. And man, is that heartbreaking to watch. So, got to go back to the very beginning. The very first time Ellie and Joel see each other in the game, they're at a dance. Somebody throws a kind of a homophobic slur at Ellie because she's dancing with Dina, and I think Dina kisses her. Yeah. And Joel just kind of wallops the guy, and Ellie's embarrassed and it's like, you don't have to fight my battles, get out of here. And Joel is like, look, I'm just trying to help. And she's like, you stay away from me. So obviously there's been tension from the beginning. At the very end, the second last scene of the whole story, after everything we've been through, it's a flashback of the aftermath of that. So Joel is waiting for her outside her house as she returns back home after the dance, and he tries to just reconcile with her, and they have a sit down, and you can see like she accepts his apology. She's not over it, but like you kind of feel, okay, we're gonna move on, and they plan a movie night for like later on in the week or that night, or the next night or whatever. Anyway, Joel is going to die the next day, and it's devastating. Like, they reconciled right before he died, but you don't think they've reconciled. When you play the game, you think like she hated him the whole time, until you realize at the end, the reason she's fueled by this anger is because I finally found a way to allow him back into my life, and then you took him from me again. It's just masterful. It's masterful writing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. So heartbreaking.
It's it's amazing. I've tried to, so we see Joel kill off all of Abby's friends, and then she gets into a fight with Abby, but then we cut back to Abby's perspective on all of this, and Abby and Lev are building up their friendship. And then she realizes, oh, all my friends are being killed. So she goes to confront Ellie. And then we come back to Abby fighting Ellie. And you're playing as Abby, and the boss of the film is Ellie. And I'm like, the boss of the game. I keep calling it film. The boss of the game is Ellie. And I remember just being really annoyed by that. I thought, I shouldn't be fighting Ellie. This is a problem for me. I really don't want to be fighting Ellie. And by the time so what happens is, Ellie gets the upper hand. Lev saves Abby and they run away. And then Ellie goes back and starts a life with Dina. And we fast forward maybe 6 months or whatever, or maybe a year, I think. Dina has had the baby, and Ellie and Dina are raising it on a farm. And Abby and Lev are looking for the Fireflies in California. And they get captured by this group called the Rattlers, which is really annoying because we did a story on the podcast called At the Crossing, and we had a group in that called the Rattlers, which is really annoying. No. I feel like they obviously listen to our podcast, but that's the only explanation. But so she gets captured, and Tommy comes to Ellie and at the farm and says, I know where Abby is. She's in Southern California or wherever. And so Ellie, against Dina's wishes, goes out to look for Abby to settle the score once and for all. And when she gets there, she finds Abby and Lev. They've been brutally tortured by this group. She's rescued some prisoners. The prisoners are taking the fight to the group. The group are going to be destroyed, obviously. And she rescues Abby and Lev, but then she says, no, we're not done yet. We're going to have this fight. And they have this brutal, barbaric fight on a beach. And she's about to kill Abby, and Lev isn't able to save her. And then she stops, and she just lets Abby go. And she comes back to the farm. Dina isn't there anymore. Dina's moved on, probably gone back to the main camp again. And then Abby just kind of heads off, presumably, or sorry, Ellie heads off, presumably to look for to go back to the camp as well. Maybe, I don't know. But how did you feel about the overall ending? That kind of epilogue kind of section with hunting down Abby and the fight and.
I think I liked it because I think what I liked is that though in like the final showdown with not the final one, but the one in like, the cinema or wherever it was, it was Abby who kind of like made the choice to stop. She was gonna kill Dina, who's a pregnant woman, um, and this like the score would have been like settled because Ellie murdered Mel, who was pregnant as well, and it would kind of just like really balance out the characters. But then at the last minute, she's kind of convinced by Lev not to do it, and so Abby is the one who makes the choice. She gets up and walks away, and Ellie's just kind of like, she just is benefits from it, and her not being able to kind of move past that because she hasn't had an opportunity to make a choice and to really kind of get what she wanted and to really work out those feelings. And then she goes and she does it at at like the prison where they're holding everyone. I thought that was really good. And I like the fact that she didn't kill Abby in the end. I thought that was good because it shows that the changes that the writers wanted to see in us and how we thought as we were playing it kind of came through in the choices that Ellie made in the end not to kill Abby. She kind of saw how Abby is similar to Joel in the fact that, she's just trying to protect Lev, and she can see that kind of comparison there and kind of made that choice. But yeah, I thought it was good because Ellie finally got a moment to choose to let it go. She finally chose, like, I'm not going to do this, instead of being fueled by that, the vengeance within her, and then kind of benefiting from the fact that, Abby has had a really similar storyline to Ellie. And she's already gone through this path of vengeance. She's gotten her vengeance, and it's gotten her nowhere closer to being kind of over everything that happened with her dad. And that kind of like comparison, Abby is at a place where she can let it go, and that benefited Ellie. And now Ellie's at a place where she's going to let it go. She's going to choose to let it go, and that benefits Abby and Lev. Like, I really like the way like it kind of came full circle. I feel like
it's very much full circle in ways I haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I kind of looked, I really wrestled with the structure of that game the first time I was playing it. I was so enjoying my time with it, but at the same time, I was so eager to just get back to the cinema where Ellie and Abby are fighting, so that we can just settle this.
Yeah.
And then, having this big kind of extra chapter then at the end where she's now going to California looking for Abby again, and Abby's been captured and so on. I felt like I was trying to think, okay, what are they trying to do here? Is this just prolonging the ending, or? And I really did wrestle with it until that moment where we see that last flashback of her apologizing to Joel, or not her. Sorry, she's not apologizing to Joel, but Joel's apologizing to her. And I remember I was like, okay, I get what this is. Abby kills Joel so that Ellie can be tested. Will Ellie be able to avoid making the same mistakes that Joel made? And but the great thing is though, you have to build Abby up into a character where not only is she kind of, let's say, evil enough, I don't think that's the right word, but let's say, she's antagonistic enough to make Ellie go off on this vendetta, but you have to also make her likable enough that you will want Ellie to spare her. Because that's the thing at the end of the day. If we want Ellie to pull the trigger, if we want Ellie to kill her, or whatever, however she does it, then will be disappointed if she doesn't. And she can't, because otherwise, again, it's all for nothing, isn't it? So I just love the idea that the only way they're going to be able to make us want Ellie to show restraint is to make us care for Abby by playing as Abby. And I just think every single creative choice, I don't know if that makes sense, but every single creative choice in that game is in service of ultimately you wanting Ellie to spare Abby.
Yeah.
Not because you love Abby, but because you want Ellie to not go down that same road that Joel went down, whether you consciously realize it or not. And that's, again, why I don't think you could achieve that in a novel. I don't think you could achieve that because you could show us Abby's story in a novel, but I don't think you would care enough about Abby at that point that you would want Ellie to spare her at the end. You know, I used Kill Bill as a reference, but they make Bill a charming character in that, in the third act of Volume 2. They show him as a doting father and all that. And he talks endlessly about how much he loves Uma Thurman's character, but at no point are you wanting Uma Thurman to spare his life.
Yeah.
But you need to want Ellie to spare Abby in this, because otherwise she's just doomed to go down that tragic road. And you kind of believe that because of her reward for sparing Abby will be that maybe in part 3, Abby will owe her one. Or maybe in part 3, we'll get to see her with Dina again, and now the child will have grown up or something, and I feel like there's a reward waiting for Ellie at the end of all this because of the different road that she's now gone down. I don't know. Where do you feel the story kind of has gone by the end of this game? Do you think she's just kind of gone off into the wild, or do you think she's returned back to the camp, or do you think she's gone looking for Dina, or what? Where do you think it's?
No, I think that she's gonna let everything with Dina kind of go. If I'm honest with you, I think she's gonna go down the path of. I hope she doesn't. I mean, I kind of want her to go to the Fireflies or try and find Fireflies, but I don't think they were ever really real, and what they promised was ever really real. I think it was more of a hope. It was just an idea, And I want it to go that way, but I kind of don't. I don't know, I am not sure. And that's why I kind of like it so much. It's because it could go anywhere. It could be anything, but I don't know. I don't want it to go back to Jackson. I want it to move forward in some way. I think the symbolism at the end of the game is her, leaving the guitar behind and walking away from it. I think she needs to move away from a lot of this stuff that's, Joel and Jackson and Dina and Tommy. I think some of those characters are definitely going to come back. We're going to see them again, but I want her to kind of pick her own future and decide where she's going and decide what she wants, and to become more active in that, and just not. I don't want her to just pursue the path of laying down her life for a cure, because we've already done that. I want to see something else. I don't know what I want to see. But yeah, I don't know.
I definitely think there's going to be a part 3.
Oh yeah,
absolutely, and I think it'll definitely be it's Abby and Ellie working together. Do you think so? No.
I kind of want to see it. I want to see Abby's character again, but I don't know that I want to see those two characters working together, because I think that all they've been through, I think that's too much of a stretch. I understand letting it go and sparing her life. They both made that choice, but them being able to work together and go on a mission together, I feel like that's a step too far personally. But I don't know. I do want to see Abby again though.
I think any show, any game creators that would kill off Joel in the beginning, it's like killing Solid Snake at the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 2, or it's like killing your favorite, I mean, it's just unheard of, the idea of killing such a beloved character. Imagine Nathan Drake getting killed at the beginning of Uncharted 4 and handing it over to somebody. It would just be unheard of. But they did it, and I just think you can't as much as we kind of armchair write this potential sequel, I just don't know where the hell it goes.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Where do you think the TV series is going to go? Because I'm really hoping they're not going to kind of slavishly follow the the game, because it we've got that already. I mean, it's not like this is a story that needs that much adaptation, is it?
No, you're right. Yeah,
I
because there's
don't
so much.
know. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a very cinematic, it's a very televisual cinematic story as is.
yeah,
I mean, there are
uh,
people who've just edited it all together as a movie anyway on YouTube. Like
yeah,
it's not like we're taking a game like Resident Evil, which is about puzzle solving and about ammunition conservation and all that kind of stuff. It's not really about the story. It's about the experience of exploring that environment. You can't
yeah,
really translate that directly into a movie, but you can translate the script for The Last of Us. It was even written as a screenplay, wasn't it?
yeah. Mhm.
So where do we take it? How do you pitch this? I don't know.
I don't know. They need to find their own voice, though. I feel like there's a lot of stuff that the game does incredibly well because it's a game. As you were saying before, like the shift in perspective, I think is so successful because it is a game, and in any other medium, it's not gonna work as well, and it's just gonna lose people. I feel like so. I think with the TV series, whatever they choose to do, it needs to be because it works best for TV and because you can take a good minute to look at some, interesting questions like how are you talking about um is it Marlene? Is she like a believable character like that? Stuff like that, stuff that was missed in the games because of what perspective we were in, or I don't know, but I do think they need to make sure that it's like their own voice and their own way of telling the story outside of the games. Yeah.
I have no doubt that I will be totally kind of enamored with Pedro Pascal in this, right?
Yeah.
And this isn't even his first time doing this story of taking cargo and falling, developing a deep, meaningful relationship with it. I mean, we've seen this in Mandalorian. We've kind of already got this story, haven't we?
Yeah.
And even the Mandalorian in Mandalorian, they want the Empire, whoever they want, Baby Yoda, Grogu, so they can do experiments on it and all that. Like he's got this power that everybody wants, like and it
Oh,
and it is very much the Wild West. I mean, this is very it's weird because The Last of Us, was very heavily compared to The Road, and rightly so when it first came out. It is, very similar in many ways. I think this is superior, though, if I have to say. But then it's funny because now the Last of Us TV show, I think people will inevitably make those comparisons. There'll be lots of memes out there, I think, between Mando and Grogu and Pedro and the young woman playing the child, playing Ellie as well. But I think it's also really cool because if this show gets enough seasons, the characters can age into Last of Us Part Two.
mm,
But how do you do that fractured relationship then as well? It's very easy to do in the game because you can skip 7 years.
yeah.
Do you skip 7 years? Do you recast Ellie as and have somebody else play? If you're going down that road of repeating the
Yeah.
games, so I think they're going to have to do something very original with this. I
Yeah.
don't think they have the flexibility to be able to just copy the movie or copy the games rather.
No, I agree.
Any final thoughts on The Last of Us?
Just tremendous. Really excited to see what they do next with it. I
Yeah.
think yeah, it's
Do
amazing.
do you want a third game?
I do. I do. There's still more to be told, definitely. Um, I think so. I think there might be more in those years that we missed between The Last of Us 1 and 2. I think there's more in there that we might be able to see. But yeah, I don't think this is the end for Ellie. I think we need to see a bit more. And I feel like she needs to. She's like at the end of Act 2. Like she needs to finish her journey. She needs to have like she needs to become someone better. She needs to transform a bit more, I think, as a character. She's not quite done yet. Yeah, and same with Abby. I'd like to see Abby again.
Yeah, definitely. And Lev is fantastic. Lev's journey of kind of coming to understand the just the little things in the world that they weren't able to experience in their enclosed community. I think, there's so much fun to be had there, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm afraid of what they might do with the story. That's the thing, because they could, they've shown us that anyone's up for the chopping block,
Yeah.
and they can take even the slightest thing and make it into this emotionally profound experience. And I guess I'm just it's the uncertainty. When you give me a new Uncharted game, I know exactly what you're going to give me. When you give me a new Resident Evil game, I know exactly what you're going to give me. I have no idea what you could give me with this game.
Yeah.
I know God of War 2 will probably send me on this emotional roller coaster, but I'm confident that we're not going to see Kratos sacrifice himself for his son or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't feel like we're going to go in that direction, But they could do it with The Last of Us, where a beloved character. I don't know. Yeah. It's becoming the Game of Thrones of video games. Let's hope it doesn't end the same way either.
I'd be so disappointed.
That's for a different video, I think. Thanks very much, Laura, for your time today, and we'll be back next week for another discussion. Thanks very much for listening, everybody. And as I said before, do check out our website, thescriptdepartment.net, for all the cool stuff we get up to. Hit us up on social media. Links are in the description. And do subscribe to the podcast as well. If you haven't, just search for The Script Department. Thanks very much.